Major crackdown on Christians is underway across China. Pastors and parishioners have been arrested, church buildings bulldozed, and in one city, residents and business owners were ordered to remove Christmas decorations, much like an American grade school principal did in Nebraska just a few weeks ago. Here to discuss that issue is Family Research Council President, my good friend, Tony Perkins. Tony, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks, Todd. Great to be with you again.
All right. So what's going on in China here? I mean, I really haven't seen a crackdown like this on Christians in many, many years.
Well, to see something of this nature, you got to go back to Mao's Cultural Revolution in the mid-1960s. And what's happening here, similar to what the Obama administration did when they used rhetoric that would suggest that they were faith-friendly, it's actually a head fake. The Chinese are using language that the West would say, oh, well, they respect religious freedom, when in fact they are hostile toward religious freedom. And the government there, the Chinese government, the Communist Party is what's running the government there, they want to control religion out of fear that it might influence government. But the reality is, I think they are they're going to be surprised. They're going to be shocked because many others have attempted to control Christianity, control religion, and it has led to their downfall. And I think China is. We've seen in the last part of this year a crackdown on what are called house churches. These are actually churches that are unofficially recognized, but they've been out operating in the open for a number of years. But now this crackdown on a lot of these prominent pastors.
And Tony, in spite of this crackdown, what I find to be remarkable is that many of these Christians are continuing to practice their faith. They're continuing to go to church, and they don't seem to be terribly disturbed by the prospect of being thrown in prison or really tortured for their religious beliefs.
Well, Xi Jinping is cracking down. As I said, there's nothing like this going. You have to go back to Mao's Cultural Revolution. But you're right. What we're seeing here is something that we haven't seen in a long time in China, where pastors are openly making statements, signing on to statements, demanding religious freedom. And I think in part, Todd, that is the result of a new resolve that we're finding in Christians around the world, because there's an administration in Washington, D.C. that once again understands that religious freedom is a basic human right and are not only willing to talk about it, but actually take steps to defend and advance religious freedom around the globe.
And to that point, it was rather ironic when we heard the reports of the Chinese city that had ordered the businesses to take down all the Christmas decorations, weren't allowed to do that. It reminded me of exactly what happened at that grade school in Elkhorn, Nebraska, just last month, when the principal told the teachers you had to eradicate Christmas decorations from the classrooms. Tony, we're trying, and what Family Research Council is trying to do is make sure what's happening in China does not happen here in the United States of America.
Well, that's why it's so important that we have an understanding of what religious freedom really is. You know, as I mentioned, the Obama administration, they talked about the freedom of worship, which was a very truncated view of our First Amendment freedom, which said you can worship however you want. Well, the Chinese say you can worship in our state-sanctioned churches, but in reality, there is no freedom of worship. And it's not just freedom of religion. There's not just Christians, Todd. Muslims in the western portion of China, the Uyghur Muslims, are actually being sent to re-education camps. There's reports now of over 1 million of these of the Muslim sects, of the Uyghur Muslims, that they are in these re-education camps where they are subjected to all types of torture, of punishment, brainwashing, all kinds of stuff. This is happening there. Of course, the Tibetan monks, they're going after the Buddhists. So they are hostile toward faith in general in China. Now, the United States has a role to play here. We have, since 1999, the State Department has put them has listed them as a country of particular concern. That needs to continue, but our trade with China needs to factor in this fundamental recognition that America has that religious freedom is a human right.
And really, that's the challenge, because again, battling China with the trade wars, much like Saudi Arabia. And I know you were on the show just a couple of weeks ago talking about those Saudi textbooks that
Right.
went after Christians and Jews. But again, it seems like there's really not too terribly much the administration can do, that Washington can do on this.
Well, again, it has to be a holistic approach in and of itself. You're right. Religious freedom, trying to force China to respect religious freedom from a Western understanding of what religious freedom is, which is clearly influenced by Christianity. But the fact is, the trade that we do with China, the relationships we have with them, religious freedom needs to factor into that until they, and it's not just religious, I mean, this crosses over into human rights. And when you're putting people, children and others, into re-education camps, brainwashing them, subjecting them to torture, that's a human right violation. And the United States needs to take that into consideration in any type of trade negotiations with China.
Well said. And the president's going to have to call him out on this kind of stuff. He's just going to have to do it. Tony, we really appreciate the great work you are doing, not just here in America, but really all over the world, as you're taking a stand for religious liberty. We really admire that.
Well, thank you, Todd. Always great to be on your show.
All right, Tony Perkins. Happy New Year, Tony.
Happy New Year to you as well.